Students, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So we'll take few more minutes. So we just have 59. Students, can you hear me? I just changed my audio. Let me know whether you can hear me or not.
Yes, sir.
Right. Is it clear for you?
Yes, sir. Clear.
All right. Okay. Right. Thank you. Let me take few more minutes. We just have 76. I don't know whether the average number of students, based on my experience, average in with your batch, 100 students will be participated. We'll take a few more minutes, right? Right. Since time has passed, let me start the topic. Today's topic. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Okay. Still, good morning. Good morning to you all. Right. We meet again. So after few months back. So we met in financial reporting, and so normally I am also doing this financial modeling lectures, but this time I just do few lectures because I I apply for the leave. So then I just have a few months to work. So then that lectures have been shifted to the students. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So then I
Yes.
just, okay, right. Uh, it's automatically disconnected and again reconnected. So anyway, so did you hear? So what I am earlier said?
No, sir.
All right. Okay. So that automatically disconnected. So that's why. Anyway, so I have been engaged with few topics on financial modeling. So then earlier I did financial modeling, but because I am going to apply for the leave, so then my higher studies, then another lecturer will involve with this financial modeling and forecasting, specifically that Nishant and Jamil sir. I just do few topics, finance, time series analysis and portfolio. So then today I am going to discuss this time series analysis and how it's used for the forecasting. Let me start the recording, right? Can you see the screen? Can you see the shared screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So have you downloaded the handout? So I have already uploaded. So have you all downloaded? Hopefully you have already downloaded. Right, so we'll start since the time has passed. We just have 88. So hopefully others will join later. Time series analysis. Have you ever heard time series data? Have you ever heard time series data? So what do you understand by time series data? Right, okay. Anyway, so we'll start with the learning outcomes. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify the time series and time series method, describe the component of time series, and identify trend and seasonal components, use regression analysis, and use smoothing methods in time series, and develop trend projections, right? Basically, these are the areas I'm going to cover within this topic. What the time series and what the components, and how we can identify these different components in time series, and use of regression in time series, as well as the smoothing methods which we used in time series will also discuss. And based on the time series, how we can project future projection, so we can predict the future, right? Right. So what is forecasting? So basically, you have already heard, I think you have already learned the basic things belongs to the financial modeling and forecasting. So we develop model, and basically we develop the model and predict the future. What we are going to do is, in financial modeling, based on the historical data, we develop kind of a model, and based on this model, we can predict the future. So then here is just mention what is forecasting. As you all know, the forecasting is predicting future events. So there are different approach we can use for the predicting or else forecasting. The qualitative methods and the quantitative methods. The qualitative methods are somewhat, it's kind of a different approach. So it has some difficulties, inherent difficulties in qualitative approach. So because it's based on some qualitative factors, it used in limited data, right? So the qualitative methods apply when the data is very limited. There is no historical data and the data is limited. So then we can go for the qualitative methods, right? So here you have it's clearly mentioned, used when situation is verge and little data exists. For example, in such scenario that new products and new technology, right? Basically, there we use some experiences, past experiences and intuitions, right? In qualitative methods, we analyze based on the past experiences. We have no clear data. There's no historical data. So then we go for the kind of experiences and intuitions, right? Then, however, we are focusing that quantitative methods, right? So we are much more interesting on quantitative because we have that historical data. Based on this historical data, we can forecast what would be the future. Here you can see, used when situation is stable and historical data exist, right? The qualitative methods are applying where the situation is stable and the historical data is available, right? So examples are given: existing product, current technology. For example, if you want to forecast the next 5 year sales, next year sales, we can identify the last 5 year sales and predict the future, right? The same existing product, we can predict the future. For the quantitative methods, we are using mathematical techniques, right? Different mathematical tools to predict the future, right? So therefore, we are focusing on these quantitative methods. The quantitative forecasting methods can be divided into two, right? So then first one is time series model, which we are going to focus over here. Other one is causal models, right? The time series models, we are using different approaches. Again, we can use the different approach: moving average, exponential smoothing, trend models, right? We'll discuss these models, how we can use moving average in the sense kind of a average value we are using for the last 5 years. So then we get the 5-year average. So likewise, we calculate average value, then we forecast. Then exponential smoothing methods, right? So it's also kind of a time series model. So we'll come up later. What does it mean? And trend models, right? It's kind of identify the trend and forecast the future, right? So then causal models, another method we are using the quantitative forecasting, causal models, which is regression. So normally we have in regression dependent and independent variable. We predict these independent variables and we derive how does the dependent variable is behave, right? So if you remember the basic function y equal a plus bx, right? That is the basic function of regression. So then based on the dependent variable, we can predict how its impact on the dependent variable. When the one unit change in the independent variable, what extent that the dependent variable will change can be derived based on the regression analysis, right? Regression is a separate topic, so then we'll discuss later. So we are focusing on these time series models, right? What is time series? Let's see what is time series. Can you hear me? Is it clear for you? Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay, right. Okay. Time series, as I told you, we are in the process of forecasting quantitative methods and focus on the time series models. What is time series? Have you ever heard time series? As I told you earlier, I'm asking the same question. Time series, what do you understand by time series? The idea is behind the term time. Yes, tell me, any student? Yes, one student is going to answer. Right. Here the definition is there. By reviewing the historical data over the time, we can better understand the pattern of the past behavior of the variable and better predict the future behavior. Idea is there. The time series, in the sense we observe the data over the period of time, right? So over the period of time, so then we identify the kind of a pattern over the last observation, then we predict the future. The time series, in the sense we pick the historical data based on the time. So then important thing is, so we get this set of observation in an equal time gap. That is the important what we call important thing behind the time series data. So we just need to take this observation in an equal time gap. For example, annual sales, monthly sales. So we can't take the one in monthly and other one is annually, right? It won't be a time series. To become a time series, we need to get the information in an even time gap. Otherwise, it won't be a time series. It may be annually, it may be daily, it may be weekly. All the observations should be taken in an even time gap. That is the important thing of time series. So here the basic idea is there. Time series is a set of observation on the variable measured over the successive point. That is what it mentions, the successive point in a time over the successive period of time. So equal time gap. The objective of time series method is to discover the pattern. Basic objective of this time series data is we identify the past pattern, historical pattern, and then we extrapolate, right? Extrapolate the pattern into the future. We extend this pattern into the future. The extrapolate in the sense we identify the historical pattern and that we extend this pattern into the future, right? So then we can predict what will be the future value, right? We pick the historical data, then identify their pattern, and we predict the trend, and we forecast based on these trend values, right? That is what we are going to do based on the time series data. The forecast is based on solely the past value of the variable and the past forecast error, right? But so the inherent what we call this that disadvantage is if we have the wrong data, so our forecast will be definitely go wrong, right? Therefore, we need to take the much more accurate, so 100% accurate data. So there may be error, but as much as possible, we need to get the accurate data. Otherwise, our predictions will go wrong. Our extrapolate will go wrong, right? The extrapolate in the sense based on the historical, we identify the future pattern and predict the future. Here again that explain what the time series is, set of evenly spaced numerical data. So I earlier said we obtain the data in an even time gap. So it's we taken the numerical data and we taken over the even time gap. Forecast based only on past values. Assume that the factors influence the past, present, and future will continue, right? So we assume that the condition, whatever the factors affect for the available data is continue for the present and future. These are the assumptions we made. We used in time series, right? We get the even time gap and we assume that the factors affecting for the observed data is keep same over the period, right? Here, for example, that yearly sales 2017, 18, 19, 2020, and 21, that sales values are given, right? So even time gap. So in between this, each data, we have only 1 year time gap. Right. So then when we forecast the time series, so we have to identify some components in this time series, right? So far we learned what the time series. Tell me any student what the time series is. Tell me one student what the time series is. It's kind of observation we made, we taken over the equal time gap. right? So then when we forecast based on the time series, we need to identify some components in each time series, the same time series. If you take a one time series, it consists of 4 components, right? What are those 4 components? Trend component, cyclical components, seasonal component, and irregular component. There are 4 components consist in one time series, right? We do need to derive these component. We do need to identify these component, and then we can forecast based on this component, right? First one is trend component. In one time series, we can identify the trend component. It represents the gradual shifting time, shifting of a time series relatively higher or lower value over time. So the repeating upward or downward movement, right? The trend component in the sense, it's kind of a repeating upward or downward movement. So here you can see that sales and time, this figure you can see. The one is getting a lower value. Then another one is let me take right here. These are the points. So it's lower, again it's higher, again it's become lower. So likewise, it's has an upward movement, right? So the trend component in the sense, the repeating upward or downward movement, repeating upward or downward movement. So we consider as a trend component. Here it says it represents the gradual shifting over the time, relatively higher or lower value over the time. Trend is usually a result of change in the population, demographic, technology, and consumer preferences, right? So some reasons might be affect for the trend component. The population, right? So when the population is changed, so then the sales might be increased. Again, it might be change, reduce. So likewise, some kind of factors, the population, demographic, technological factors, right? Technological factors, then consumer preferences. Based on the change on the consumer preferences, sales might increase, again lower, again increase. So likewise, that upward movement or downward movement can be there, right? So then this is called trend component. It's upward or downward movement in a time series. It may be a upward, it may be a downward, right? Then another component, cyclical component. It represents any recurring sequence of points or above and below the trend line lasts more than 1 year, right? It's also kind of a repeating pattern, but it observed for more than 1 year, right? The cyclical component in the trend component. So overall upward or downward movement, right? So the trend component in a sense, overall upward or downward movement. The cyclical component in the sense upward or downward movement observed for more than 1 year, right? So here, if you take this figure, this period might be 2 year, 3 year, 4 years, maximum to 10 years, right? So here you can see that it's getting lower. Again, it increased over here. So likewise, upward or downward movement for more than 1 year, we call it as cyclical component. So the trend component in the sense overall, right? Overall upward or downward movement. Here cyclical, then upward or downward movement observed for more than 1 year. Assume that component represent the multiple year cyclical movement in the economy, right? So basically this cyclical movement can be a result of some economic factors. So some reason, some period, the recession period in Sri Lanka, so we always in a recession. But in the developed countries, you have some recession period for the corona period, so they might be a recession. So then they have that the boom, right? So the boom in the economy, then again that the pattern will change, right? That's why it's we observe for more than 1 year. Basically in time series, when we forecast the time series, it's difficult to forecast this cyclical component because we can't get the clear picture of this for the more than 1 year data. So then normally this cyclical component, we are much not interesting in the time series forecasting, but we just focus how it's behave. Then seasonal component. Seasonal component in the sense upward or downward movement within a 1 year, right? In a time series, it's kind of an upward or downward movement within a 1 year. Here you can see that 4 seasons we have in Sri Lanka. We are not much experiencing, but in Western countries, they have that clear 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall. So then some product sales can be changed based on this seasons, right? In winter seasons, for example, wool cloth, right? In winter season, so then that the demand for the wool cloth can be increased. Again, the spring, summer, fall, that will be changed. Then some customs might be in Sri Lanka. The New Year season, that the demand for the new items might be increased again after New Year period. So again, it goes down. So likewise, that repeating pattern can be observed based on the season, different season. So this is called seasonal component. The repeating pattern, upward or downward within the 1 year. Remember that the cyclical component we observe for more than 1 year. Seasonal component we observe within a 1 year, upward or downward movement. Then irregular component. We also call noise component and as well as the random, right? Different terms we are using. So then it's an irregular component. It's unpredictable movement, right? It's catch all factors that account deviations actual time series value that we accept based on the other component. It caused by the short term, unanticipated and non-recurring factors that affect the time series, right? Sorry. In corona, this period, so then unexpected, that is unexpected event, so that sales of some items might be reduced. So likewise, that irregular component in the sense unexpected behavior in the time series, right? Unanticipated as well as non-recurring factors. For example, the earth give some earthquake or war, sudden incident might happen for the irregular component, right? It's non-recurring movement in the time series, right? So therefore, these are the 4 components we can identify within a one time series, right? The trend component, what do you understand by trend component? Any student? Trend component in the sense? Overall upward or downward movement, right? Trend component in the sense overall. It may be repeating. So we can say the very basically overall. One time series, we can say so overall, whether it's upward or downward. Then cyclical component in the sense recurring movement for more than 1 year. Seasonal component in the sense repeating pattern within a 1 year. Irregular component in the sense the unexpected movement in the time series. Non-recurring factors can be affected for such movement. This is also difficult to predict. Right, these are the key components that we can identify within the one time series. Right, within the one time series, we have 4 components. When we predict these based on the time series, we do need to derive these different components. Then let's move to the prediction part. So now we are going to predict based on this time series data, right? We are going to predict the future based on time series data, right? For that, we call the time series decomposition, right? So we have already learned components, different components. So when we predict the future based on the time series, we need to break down this time series into sub-components, sub-pattern. This is called decomposition. If you take a one time series, it consists of 4 components. So the decomposition in the sense we are going to break down this, we are going to derive this sub-component in the time series, right? Api time series එකක් ගත්තොත් time series එකේ තියෙනවා pattern 4ක්, right? එකක් තමයි trend component. ඒ කියන්නේ overall time series එකේ තියෙන movement එක. upward movement එකක්ද downward movement එකක්ද. ඊළඟට cyclical අවුරුදු දෙකට වැඩි කාලයක්, අවුරුදු 1කට වැඩි සහ 10කට අඩු කාලයක් ඇතුළත සිදුවන ඉහළ පහළ යෑම, upward or downward movement අපි කියනවා cyclical component. ඊළඟට seasonal component එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ so within 1 year අවුරුද්දක් ඇතුළත සිදුවෙන time series එක upward or downward movement. Seasonal factors can be affected for the seasonal fluctuations. Then irregular, unexpected movement in the time series. මෙන්න මේ time series වල මේ තියෙන component අපි breakdown කරන එක නැත්නම් වෙන් කරන එක අපි කියනවා time series decomposition. The procedure of breaking down the time series into sub-pattern into the identify the component factors, that which is called decomposition. අපි මේ identify කරගත්ත sub-component break කරන එක time series එකේ අපි කියනවා decomposition, right? Let's see how we can do this time series decomposition, right? So there are different models we can use to decomposition. Basically, we use 2 approaches, that is multiplicative model and the additive model, right? The multiplicative model, here the y is the predicted value, predicted over the period. S is the seasonal trend, and this irregular component E represent the irregular, right? So likewise, we get the multiplicative value of multiplied value of these components, then we predict the future. We'll see how it's used, this multiplicative model. Then additive model, the another model we are using for decomposition is additive model, right? So additive model, we add these components, right? Seasonal, trend, and irregular component. As I told you, the cyclical component, it's kind of a difficult to predict because it's observed for more than 1 year. So then we can't bring that cyclical component into the prediction. So therefore we omit, we assume that it's included in the trend component, right? It's included in the trend component. The trend cyclical component can be just be referred to as trend component, right? So therefore, we are using two models to break down this component, that is multiplicative model and additive model. In multiplicative model, we multiply each component, and additive model, we get the additive values of these components, right? Then these models are applied based on the behavior of the time series, right? These models, these two models are applied. We'll learn this model by practical example, using a practical example. So then if the seasonality remains constant, right? The seasonal fluctuation, these are called seasonal fluctuations. Here you can see. Here you can see these seasonal fluctuations, right? Seasonal fluctuations. So if you draw a line in this time series, that it's almost same, this seasonal fluctuation. It can be bring into two parallel line, right? It's 2019 to 2014, the all data. But seasonal fluctuations are constant. So then we apply additive model, right? If the seasonal fluctuation, seasonal movements remain constant or stable, we are using additive model, right? Then if the seasonal fluctuations are follow the trend line, right? So here that the trend line, the red color is trend. Is it upward or downward trend? So what is this trend? What is this trend?
Upward trend.
Yeah. Yes, very good. It's an upward movement, right? So then if the seasonal fluctuations are followed the trend, then we use the multiplicative model, right? Before going to apply any model, first we derive the basic scatter plot for the time series. Then we observe how it's behaved over the period, whether it's the seasonal fluctuations are constant or not. Then if it is constant, you go for the additive model. And if the seasonal components, seasonal fluctuations, so this is one season, right? So here 1 year, here this is 1 year. So these are called seasons, right? Season. This is one season, one period, right? This is one cycle. So then if the seasonal fluctuations are constant, we go for the additive. If the seasonal fluctuations are follow the trend line, so it may be also a downward movement, right? It may be also a downward movement, right? So it's like, why is this, right? So it's also here, right? Let me erase it here. right? So you can see it's follow the trend. So then we can use the multiplicative model, right? These are the two methods we can use to predict the future based on time series. Other model will be discussed, right? So far we discussed what the time series and what the component and what the available approaches we can use to predict the time series data based on their component, based on their behavior, right? We'll go for the example, right? So let me take one example. We'll do right here. Student, please take down this Excel sheet, the information given in the data given in this Excel sheet, then we'll do it, right? Please take down this information, then we'll practice it. So we are going to use decomposition models. First one is multiplicative model. Please take down this information into your Excel sheet. So I will give you a few minutes to copy this information into your whatever your computer or whatever your device, then we'll practice it.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Kianputa. Yes, student. Yes, you can hear. You can ask anything. $95, you are going to ask something. What is it?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Oh.
sir. Excuse me. I can leave switch and then unmute.
All right. Okay. Remember this, since this is a practical subject, keep your attendance. Otherwise, if you lose any, if you can't attend for any lecture, so then so that the practical can't be do like that. Keep your attendance continuously, otherwise you will fall into a trouble. Right here is given some sales data over the last 3 years, 2019, 20, and 21. Quarterly sales are given, right? QT in the sense quarter, right? QT in the sense quarterly, quarter කියන එක මේ තියෙන්නේ QT කියලා, right? Then T in the sense the time. We observe 12 time periods, right? In each year we observe 4, and altogether we have 12 observations. Here the 4-period moving average, centered moving average, then seasonal plus irregular component, then adjusted seasonal index, and deseasonalized sales. So when you finish raise your hands. Jet. Okay, finished. So here, another section is there. Please copy this section as well. So you don't need to color these things. Later on, you can use the different colors. Just copy the information, then we'll do it. So when you finish, you can use the raise hand. So then I can assume that you have finished your copying. Use the raise hand option in the Zoom. Finished?
Okay, sir.
Right. Okay, let me start. So can't you use the raise hand function? Yes, one student raised. So yes, 2, 3, yes. Yes, okay. I think almost finished. Most of you have already finished, right? So it's increasing the raising hands. Hopefully, you finished, right? Here is the data. We have the last 3-year sales, quarterly sales, right? Quarterly sales, and based on that, we are going to predict the 2022 quarterly sales. First step is we are going to derive scatter plot for the existing time series data, and we are going to identify how it's behaved, right? Let's select this data. So we can select with the headings, then insert, let me put it down, scatter plot, right? So let's use this, right? Here, what I did is we just select this time. You can't get the quarter because it's not a continuous value. It's again 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That we just put it continuous value, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the each observation. So then that should be used for the graphical representations. So then we select these 2 columns and insert. We are going to draw a scatter plot, right? We just focus scatter plot. This is the scatter plot for the existing data. Right? This is the scatter plot. Just select these 2 columns, then insert scatter plot. First step is we do need to derive the scatter plot. Then we need to identify which model should be applicable, right? Here we are going to apply the multiplicative. So, but in practical context, we don't know whether which model is applicable. The applicable model is decided based on the behavior of the time series. Then we can just select on the line, right? Somewhere, click on somewhere. So then right click and add trend line, right? So you can just put it linear regression, right? The linear regression line, linear line. Right. If you miss anything, you can unmute and speak, right? So this is the trend. You can see that our observations are followed. Observations are following the trend, right? So if you draw these yes, right. You can see that the observations are, yes, one research patient. Sorry, sir. Could you please do it again? Yes. So what I just do it, just select these two, then insert, then select scatter plot, right? Remember, this is scatter plot, right? Don't select other graph. I just select scatter plot, right? It's the most applicable, right? Then I just bring it down for somewhere place that no information, right? Then please click on somewhere else in the line. Then right click on your mouse, then add trend line, right? So then you can see the trend. So then you can observe that the time series is not constant, right? It's followed the trend line, right? It's upward movement, and it also follow this movement that movement is large, right? Here the movement, this is one time series. So then again it's followed the trend. So then we can assume that we are going to apply the multiplicative model, right? In exam, you won't give whether it's multiplicative or additive. First, you derive the scatter plot, then check whether it's constant or not, right? If it is not constant, constant over these fluctuations are not constant over the period, right? These fluctuations are not constant over the seasonal fluctuations are not constant over the period. So then we do need to apply the multiplicative model, right? Now we decide which model, then we are going to do it, right? First thing is now this sales we have given. Then we are going to, first step is calculate the moving average. So we are going to smooth this line, right? We are going to reduce these fluctuations and predict, right? We are going to reduce this fluctuation and predict the future, right? Therefore, we are taking the average value. First step is 4 period moving average. Why we are taking 4 period? Can't we take 5, 3, 2? The 4 period in the sense we have 4 seasons, right? So we have 4 seasons, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterly, right? So then we have 4 seasons. Therefore, we are using 4 seasons. If you are taken the monthly sales, then we do need to take the 12 period moving average, right? So for the 1 year, if you take monthly sales, then we have the 12 periods over here. So then we can take the 12 period moving average. But here we have 4 seasons. We have 4 seasons. So therefore we are taking the average of each 4 quarters, right? So they will start from here. So since we are taking the 4 years, we are starting from this third observation line. We get the average. Remember, select the average, right? Don't select the average A, average if, right? Select just average. Just select these 4. Right? Then close the bracket. Then press enter. Right? What I did is equal all the Excel functions are starting from the equal, as you already know. Then we type average. Just select first 4 quarters. Then close the bracket. Then press enter. Then please drag it down. So don't drag for the last line, last observation. So before last, so because if this is the last observation, it represents the last observation. Right? So don't drag it to the last line, right? Because it also selected blank, right? So therefore it won't accept it, right? So then just before the last line, you just drag it down. So you are raising hands. Any question? $127. Do you have any question, or you just earlier raised? So you can unmute and ask any. If you miss anything, just ask. It doesn't matter. So what we did is 4 period. Remember, the 4 period is based on the season, number of seasons we get the observation, right? Then here, the slideshow, you have given the information, the steps we do need to follow. To calculate the seasonal index, deseasonalized time series using deseasonalized, right? Then first step is compute the n period centered moving average. So this is the first step we have already followed. Compute the series of n period centered moving average, where the is the number of seasons in the time series, right? Here, remember, n is the number of seasons. If it is a 12, or if it is a 4, if it is a 3, so then we take based on that. If the n is even number, then the computed the 2 period centered moving average, right? If it is n is even number, right? So here the 4 period, so then it's a even number. Then we have no centered value, right? for the even number, we have no centered value. So therefore, again, we go for the 2-period moving average. So here you can see, if you take the calculations also given in this table right here. Can you see the slideshow?
Yes, yes.
Okay, right. Here, this is 4-period. Its calculations are also given. Here, what we did, you can see that centered value, right? We have calculated the 4-period. Let me take annotation. Right? For the 5, there's no observation, right? Right? Here, there's no point over here, right? It belongs to 2 to 3, right? So there is no observation point, right? For the since it's even number, therefore we need to go for again for the second centered moving average, that is 2-period moving average. Then we take these 4, that is this 4 is this. So then first 4 observations are here, right? So then we get the moving, say, 2-period moving average. Then it comes between these 2. So then it has the observation. It belongs to 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Here the 1 column is missing, that 1, 2, 3 for that time column. So it's falling into the third observation, right? Since we have no centered value with the even number, we should go for the again centered moving average, right? Now you can see the centered observation, right? Centered value, right? That is what we did. Then calculate centered moving average, get these 2. Then press enter. So can you explain again, right? The 4-period moving average, in the 4, here the 4-period moving average, right? Here. Here the 4-period, in the sense this one, right? The second 4, so it's something difficult to draw in pad source, right? So then here, this is belong to somewhere in between these 2, right? So the 5 is belongs to 2 and 3. It belongs to in between 2 and 3 because it's the mid value of these items, no? So then we need to go for the centered moving average. Right? Then we get these average of these 2. Then average of these 2, in the sense this it belongs to over here, right? It belongs to over here, right? Sir, 4-period moving 3 එකෙන් දැන් මෙතනින් පටන් ගෙන වැඩක් තියෙනවද අපිට? It's not useless, no? මෙතනින් අපිට ගත්තත් මෙතන ගත්තත් අපිට ගන්න වෙන්නේ මේ දැන් මෙතනින් ඕනනම් පටන් ගන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් මෙතන අපි ගත්තම මේ ටිකම තමයි ඒත් අපි ගන්න ඕනේ, right? But it's same value, right? It's much better. It's when you observe it, it's much better. It's clear if you start from third line, right? So you can see it's clearly these 4. Then again these 4, right? So likewise we take starting from the third line, right? Then we do need to derive the seasonal and irregular component, right? In a multiplicative model, seasonal and irregular component can be derived by dividing the actual sales from the centered moving average, right? So we are going to derive the seasonal and irregular component, right? We are going to decomposing this time series, in the sense we break down this time series into different components. So first step is we get the average and we derive the seasonal and irregular component, right? From the average. How far it's deviate from the average. So then it's the seasonal and irregular fluctuations, right? The average in the sense is straight line. From straight line, its deviations values are, deviations can be identified in between 1 to 0. So then it called seasonal and irregular component. We divide it, right? Then we can drag it down. What we did is actual sales divided by average. Right? Here the steps are given. Divide each time series observation by the corresponding centered moving average to identify the seasonal and irregular effect of the time series. Step 3 here. So we are here. Right? So we derive the seasonal and irregular component. chat. Sir, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Let me draw the centered values. It's not, yes, centered values, sorry. Y, X, right, it won't use over here, right? Then again, right, we calculate the seasonal and irregular components. Then we do need to identify the similar quarter values, right? Let's color it. For the first step, we can bring, we can pick up at once later on. For the first step, for the first stage, so let's color the same quarter values in same colors. Third quarter value, right here. We are going to get the sum of these same quarter values. Then fourth quarter, we use different color for the fourth quarter. You don't need to color for the understanding purpose, I just do it. First quarter, then quarter values. I just color the same quarter values, right? Right. Right. What I did is I just colored the same quarter values, right? Same quarter values. First, third quarter, first quarter, right? So we are over here. Then we are going to calculate the seasonal index. So it's right. We are going to calculate the seasonal index, right? So this is how we can calculate the seasonal index. First, we identify what are the similar quarter values, then we can copy over here. We have a separate table. We have a separate table here, right? First quarter, we just copy the first quarter value equal first quarter, right? Right. Then another first quarter value is there here, 0.62. Then equal the second quarter values. We have two second quarter values. Two second quarter values. What is next? Here 1.76. Then third quarter values. Third quarter values. We are going to calculate the seasonal index, right? The seasonal index is used to calculate the, remove the seasonal effect. Third quarter values. Fourth quarter values. Fourth quarter values. We just copy. Some of you are raising time to time. I don't know whether you have a problem or not. So if you have a problem, you can unmute and ask, right? If you miss any point, then we need to calculate the average of these two. Average. Average. Right? Average. We just pick the similar quarter values. We just taken the similar quarter value, then we get the average. We are going to calculate the adjusted seasonal index, right? Seasonal index. Then seasonal factor, right? So I will teach you I just add one line and right. This is another way we can calculate average. This is just optional. alternative. Alt. Here, I just alternative method we can use to calculate the average of these two, these averages, right? This is the alternative method. We can use average if function, right? In exam, you can use this average if function rather than copying this value, right? Average if function, right? We just copy this range. Here is the formula. These are the values we need to pick from the table: range, criteria, and average range, right? The range, in the sense we are going to take range over here, right? Then it should be fixed. So how you can fix we can use the F4 function, right? If you have the function key, then by pressing function key, press F4, then we can keep it as absolute cell, right? Then criteria is we need to get the quarterly similar values. Then comma. Then from the seasonal and irregular component. It should also fixed. Then close the bracket. Then press enter. Then you can see that the similar values, right? I just want to explain how these values are coming, right? So if you know the things, you can just use this function, average if function, right? Let me do it. If you miss it, I will do it again. You can use average if function at the exam, right? I just want to tell you what these values, that's why I have the first step is that the general steps. Then here the alternative method, we can use average if function, So you can use as much as possible Excel functions, right? There are a lot of functions. The most comprehensive software is this Excel spreadsheets, that all the statistical tools, all the statistical software are based on this Excel. So therefore more comprehensive. You can use for most of the things, right? The range is here. These are the criteria we are going to give. These are the values we are going to give. So if you want the function table, if you want to function, so the range is just click on FX. The range is you need to pick this value from each quarter, right? Then press F4. Press F4. Press F4, right? Press F4. Then criteria is this. You need to get the similar quarter out of these quarterly values, right? Then the values should be picked from here, right? That should be also fixed. Now you can see the results is there. If you can see, I think if I use Windows, you can see different way. So here, okay, done. right? Then next step is here. Then the purpose of calculating this average is we are going to remove the irregular component, right? We remove the irregular. Then we are going to remove the seasonal component. For the remove the seasonal component, we are going to calculate the seasonal adjusted seasonal index, right? All these steps are followed to remove these component and smooth the line. අපි මේ එක steps follow කරන්නේ අපේ මේ time series එකේ තියෙන fluctuations අඩු කරලා the fluctuations are result of these component, right? The trend, cyclical, seasonal and irregular. So then what we are doing is we are removing this, right? By getting average values, we are removing these component and we are going to smooth the line. අපි මේ line එකේ fluctuations අඩු කරලා පුළුවන් තරම් straight line එකක් විදියට අරගෙන තමයි අපි predict කරන්නේ, right? That's why we are taking this different kind of averages. So far we have we have calculated the seasonal and irregular. Now at this stage we remove the irregular. මේ stage එකේදී අපි කරේ මේ irregular. මෙතනින් average එක ගන්න කිය අපේ purpose එක. The purpose of getting average is remove the irregular component. Then we are going to do the next step to remove the seasonal component, right? What we do is we get the sum of these values. Sum of these values 3.6, 3.964 sum. You can use any value, right? Here this one or this one, right? Here the alternative way. If you are using the alternative, you don't need to copy these. You just prepare table 1, 2, 3, 4 and you don't need to copy these. Then seasonal factor. Seasonal factor can be calculated, right? We have 4 seasons. So then 4 divided by, we have 4 seasons, divide by this sum of these seasonal averages value, right? Sum of these average values. Then it should be fixed. Press F4. To fix any cell or to become absolute cell, you can use the F4 function, right? F4 function. Then just the same values over the period, over the each quarter. The seasonal index, adjusted seasonal index is calculated by this average value multiplied by seasonal factor. This is why we call multiplicative model, right? We are multiplying. Comma, enter. Then please practice it. Right? Can you hear me? Am I audible? Student?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Right. So far we have calculated adjusted seasonal index, right? Right. Are you clear with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. Right. Then we are copy this value into this table. This is a adjusted seasonal index table, right? We can copy one by one over the each quarter, but so we can use it some shortcuts in Excel. Just select all these cells and equal, press equal. Then we can get transpose of this transpose, then close. Then by pressing shift control, then press enter. Equal, transpose, right? Control here. Let me do it again. Just select what we are going to do is we are going to copy these. These are some, this is not the technical thing. This is how we can use these shortcuts, right? How we can, as much as possible, we can use these functions, right? This is nothing in to understand or thing is you just memorize what the function is applicable. We are going to copy these 4 quarter into this table, right? 4 quarter values, this 0.6. What we do is select all these 4 cells, then press equal, then transpose, type transpose. Transpose in the sense we are going to change the direction. Transpose. Then select what are the values we should get the transpose value, then close the bracket. Don't press enter. When you press the enter, click by pressing Control Shift. Same at once you need to press Control and Shift, then press enter. Right? By pressing Control Shift, then press enter. Right? Shift එකයි Control එකයි press කරගෙන enter key එක press කරන්න ඕනේ. Right? Otherwise it won't copy correctly. Right? What we are doing, all these steps for remove these fluctuations, right? Then I just complete few steps and then finish it, right? So then now it's 12:28, so I just do few steps, right? Then we do need to copy this seasonal index into our original table, right? Adjusted seasonal index. This is the table we used, right? This is the table. This adjusted seasonal index is used to remove the seasonal effect, right? Here, that the purpose of finding seasonal index is to remove the seasonal effect from the time series, right? අපේ purpose එක මේ seasonal index එක calculate කරන එකේ මේ seasonal remove seasonal fluctuations remove කරන එක, seasonal component එක remove කරන එක, right? Right, then we are going to copy this seasonal index, adjusted seasonal index value over here. Again, we can use a Excel function, that is VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP, right? VLOOKUP. We are using VLOOKUP function. Right? Then it asks the lookup value. Let's see the function key. The lookup value is quarter. So we are going to bring the quarter right here, quarterly. Then table array is what the table we are going to take the information, this table. Right? Then column index in the sense which column that value should be taken. Here we have two columns. අපි මේ table එකේ columns දෙකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ column එකේ second column එකකින් තමයි අපි values pick කරන්න ඕනේ. values ගන්න ඕනේ. ඒක නිසා අපි column index එක විදියට දෙනවා 2. right? අපිට මෙතන columns තුනක් තියෙනවා නම් අපි 3 කියලා දෙනවා third column එකකින් මේ values ටික ගන්න. නමුත් මෙතන අපිට එන්නේ හැම වෙලාවෙම columns දෙකයි. first column එක quarter column එක අනිත් එක index column එක. Right? So then we take the second column value, right? Right. Here we copy this value, then just drag it down up to 12. Right? Can you do it? Have you missed this? I'll do it again. Right? What I did is, if you miss anything, you can ask me, right? I'm using VLOOKUP function. Remember, don't keep it as this is something easy, right? So you have to practice it. VLOOKUP, lookup value. So the lookup value in the sense quarterly values, we are taking quarterly. Then table, this is the table that value should be taken. Then comma. So here I have named this table. So therefore it has mentioned the seasonal index. This is how you can, let me show you how you can name this table. You just select it and here I can name this seasonal, here seasonal index table. C seasonal, right? So you can't keep the space in when you name the column or whatever the cell. You just underscore, use underscore, right? So here seasonal index, it's automatically taken. Right. So then if you select this table, it's automatically named as seasonal index. So that will be easy to give the functions, right? For example, here VLOOKUP, we are using VLOOKUP. Then here quarter. Then we can select the name we given, seasonal index table. Right here, it's if you type SE, then it's come it's automatically selected. So you don't need to move the cell, or it's automatically selected if you name whatever the table, then comma. Then value should be taken from the second column. So therefore we give 2, then press enter. Now you can close it. You can drag it down. Then deseasonalized sales. I just finished from this step by calculating the deseasonalized sales, right? Are you clear for this point? Up to this point? Are there any questions? Right, deseasonalized sales. So if you take the deseasonalize in time series, the purpose of the process called deseasonalize the time series. So the removing the seasonal index, we called it as deseasonalize in time series. By dividing each time series observation by corresponding seasonal index, the result is deseasonalized time series, right? Now we are going to remove the seasonal index, right? Seasonal fluctuations, seasonal component. How we can do is, we can divide this actual sales from the adjusted seasonal index, right? Adjusted seasonal index. We divided actual sales from the adjusted seasonal index, right? This is called deseasonalized sales after removing seasonal index and irregular component, right? After removing the seasonal and irregular component. Let's see how it's in our chart. Here, this is the actual sales, actual observations. Let's add the deseasonalized sales. Right click on the chart area. Then you can select data. You can add another data series here. I think in Excel is something, Windows something different, whatever, almost same. Add new series. I just name it as deseasonalized sales. Then x-axis is x-axis is the time over the 12 period, right? Y-axis is the sales. Then press OK. Let's see how it's behaving. Can you see? We have removed these fluctuations, right? So we have removed. You can see the new line has something straight than the earlier, right? So this is used to predict the future. අපි කරේ මේ lines වල තියෙන fluctuations sign කරා. අපිට මොකද fluctuations එහෙම එක predict කරන්න අමාරුයි. It's difficult to predict. Then we remove these fluctuations and smooth the line, right? Smooth the line. I will do it again. This how we can bring this into the same table. Right click on it, select data. Here I just add in your, I think it's something more similar. I just add new series and name is, I just select the deseasonalized sales. Y is, X is time. Time. The Y is the sales. Then press OK. Right. Any question up to now? If you miss anything, you can ask. I'm going to finish this point. So simply what we do is we take the historical information, then we get the average values to remove the seasonal and irregular component, and we calculate the deseasonalized sales. Based on the deseasonalized sales, we can predict the future, right? Apita fluctuations එක predict කරන එක, it's not success. So then we are removing this seasonal and irregular component and then predict, and it gives much more accurate prediction. Right. So far, any questions? So far, any question, or if you miss anything, any point, I'll do it the balance part on Friday, the balance on a multiplicative and additive model. Any question? Remember, very highly used techniques, this time series in the industry, right? Therefore, please be present for the lectures and get the maximum understanding, right? These are very practical subjects which we directly use in the industry, right? There are some advanced techniques. For the advanced technique, you need to have this basic knowledge, right? Advanced techniques use කරන්න පුළුවන්. Single exponential, double exponentials, triple exponentials, right? So there are a lot of advanced techniques we can use. For the advanced techniques, we need to have this basic knowledge, right? Therefore, it is important your participation and practice it, right? Don't miss this practice. If you any doubt, you can ask. Anything? Yes, chat questions. Sir, average alternative ක්‍රමයක් කියලා දුන් තැනින් පස්සේ lecture එකට එන්න බැරි වුණා. Actively. වැස්සත් එක්ක signal නෑ. So, right. Record එක ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න, right? Yes, we'll see to share the records later, but thing is I can just upload this practicals at the end of the lesson, so then you can practice it, right? There are some difficulties might be there with the rain and signal issues, so we'll upload at the end of these lessons, right? At the end of lessons, sometimes because we have that problem, if you take the recording, they are not clear, right? So some sounds are not clearly recorded, right? So therefore we are not much interesting. So anyway, if it is clear and if it is some kind of uncomfortable, so then I will upload it. Practice it. So adjusted seasonal index එක ආයේ කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? Adjusted seasonal index. Yes. Yes, I'll do it. Here the adjusted seasonal index is calculated. So I just do it this part again. But here is we just copy the same quarter value. in alternate as alternative method, we can rather than calculating separately, we can get the at once. But average එක මේ same quarter වල average එක එකවර ගන්න පුළුවන් average if function එකෙන් එක ගන්න average if range එක අපි range එක ගන්නේ මෙන්න මේ quarters වල අපි ගන්නේ average same quarter values, right? මෙන්න මේ කොටසේ, right? ඒක අපි fix කරන්න ඕනේ. fix කරන්නේ function key එකත් එක්ක අපි F4 key එක press කරනවා. එතකොට ඒක absolute cell එකක් වෙනවා. comma criteria එක එන්නේ අපේ quarterly values, quarterly moving values, quarterly seasonal irregular component values. ඒක නිසා අපි මේ අපේ table එකේ quarterly values ටික select කරගන්නවා. quarterly ඊට පස්සේ අපි range එක අපිට ගන්න ඕන average range එක අවශ්‍ය range එක මෙන්න මේ range එකේ අපිට ගන්න ඕනේ average values ටික. ඒක අපි select කරනවා ඊළඟට. right? ඒකත් වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකත් අපේ fix area එකක්. ඒක නිසා අපි ඒක fix කරනවා. close the bracket. enter. Then we get the sum of these value. මේකේ sum එක ගන්නවා අපි එකතුව ගන්නවා මේ ටිකේ. මේ average වල එකතුව ගන්නවා. අපි දැන් කරන්නේ මේ average එක ගත්තේ අපි ඉස්සෙල්ලා දැන් මේ අවස්ථාවේ අපි කරේ මේ ආය average එකක් ගත්තේ මෙතනින් irregular component එක remove කරන එක. right? Yes, another chat. Sir, seasonal sales එකක් ආයේ ටිකක් කියන්න පුළුවන්. හරි. Sir, answer Excel sheet එක upload කරනවා නේද? ඔව්. answer sheet එක upload කරන්න. right? ඊට පස්සේ අපි seasonal fact එක ගන්නවා. right? seasonal fact එක අපි ගත්තේ කොහමද? කවුරු හරි කෙනෙක් කියන්න බලන්න. මතක නම් අපේ 4 season තියෙනවා. මෙතන 12 තියෙනවා නම් seasons අපි 12 ගන්නවා. 4 seasons නිසා අපි 4 divide by අපේ calculated value එක වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක වෙනස් කරන්නේ නැහැ අපි. ඒක නිසා ඒක අපි fix කරනවා. ඒක අපි මේ average එක හැම quarter එකටම adjust කරනවා. right? Then adjusted seasonal index. Adjusted seasonal index can be calculated. Average value multiply by seasonal factor. Seasonal factor. Seasonal factor. Multiply by seasonal factor. right? Seasonal factor again multiply करना. right? So then we just copy over here. Then copy करने का मंग product काय किया ना. Select करा transpose. Select these cells. Then close the bracket. මෙතෙන්දී මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ අපි enter key එක press කරන්නේ control එකයි shift එකයි press කරගෙනම enter key එක press කරනවා. right? 3 more message. Sir, deseasonalize. Sir, now we have research meeting. Can I leave from the lecture? Yes, sir, deseasonalize sales එක කරපුවාම answer ආවේ first time in passe. So can you explain VLOOKUP function? Yes. Yes, if anyone have a lecture, yes, you can leave. So I just explain those who are answer the questions, right? So can we research? Yes, you can leave. So deseasonalize sales drag karama answer ආවේ නැහැ first time පස්සේ right බලමු අපි right then now we have transpose it then we are going to adjusted seasonal index use the VLOOKUP function VLOOKUP function the VLOOKUP value first we should get the VLOOKUp value in the sense අපි ගන්නේ quarterly value එක quarterly මේ quarterly value එකට තමයි අපි copy කරන්නේ ඒ නිසා අපි quarter ගන්න මෙතනින් මේ අපේ table එකෙන් quarter B2 table එක අපි ගන්න පුළුවන් අපි table එක name කරලා තියෙන නිසා අපිට මෙතන seasonal index කියලාම table එක කියලා ගන්න පුළුවන් නැත්නම් අපිට table එක select කරන්න ඕන right මෙතන table එකට ගිහිල්ලා මේ table එක select කරන්න right table එක select කරන්න comma ඊට පස්සේ අපි ගන්න ඕනේ second column එකෙන් ඒක නිසා අපි second column එක second කියලා අපි type කරනවා then press enter right මෙතන ඔයාලගේ ඉන්න පුළුවන් එක ප්‍රශ්නයක් මෙතන මම seasonal index කියන table එක table name කරලා තියෙන නිසා මට එනවා එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔයාලගේ table එකේ නිකන් select කරනවා නම් right මේක මම table එක name කරපු නිසා මට ඒකම select වෙනවා අපි බලමු මේකේ නම අයින් කරලා ෆස්ට් ක්වාර්ටර් එකෙන් පස්සේ එන්න හේතුව මේකේ දැන් මගේ ටේබල් එක මේ මෙතන පොඩ්ඩක් ඉන්න එක මම කියන්නම් මගේ ටේබල් එක නේම් කරලා තියෙන නිසා ඒක කොපි වෙනවා මෙතන ඔයාලා ටේබල් එක සිලෙක්ට් කරාම රීනේම් කරන එක මට බැලුවේ Anyway, so this is how we can do it. මෙතන ඔයාලා ෆන්ක්ෂන් එක දෙනකොට මේ එන කොටස මේ එන cells ටික select කරලා ඒක fix වෙන්න ඕනේ. function key එකත් එක්ක F4 press කරන්න ඕනේ, right? මෙතන මම name කරලා තියෙන නිසා මම ඒක rename කරනවා. රීනේම් කරන්න ඒක රීනේම් කරන්න ඕනේ ඔරිජිනල් එකට යන්න මම මෙතන නේම් කරලා තියෙන නිසා ඒක මට ඔටෝමැටිකලි සිලෙක්ට් වෙනවා ඒ කොටසම එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔයාලා නේම් කරලා නැත්නම් ඒ ටේබල් එක මෙතන ඒ සෙල්ස් රේන්ජ් එක ෆික්ස් කරන්න ඕනේ ඇබ්සලූට් සෙල් එකක් විදිහට කරන්න ඕනේ ෆන්ක්ෂන් එකත් එක්ක F4 key එක ප්‍රෙස් කරලා ඩ්‍රැග් කරන්න right එහෙම නැත්නම් ටේබල් එක වෙනස් වෙනවා ටේබල් එකේ රේන්ජ් එක වෙනස් වෙනකොට තමයි ඔයාලට values එන්නේ නැත්තේ right then deseasonalized sales right deseasonalized sales actual sales divided by adjusted seasonal index drag it down right now you can see that right I stop from here I think you have another lecture another meeting from here so then if you have any questions if you have any issues so then we can discuss with next lecture right on Friday we will meet again right thank you for joining if you have any questions keep it and then you can ask on Friday right thank you very much
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
okay
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.